Car dealers around America are now slashing prices, with big automakers like Tesla and Ford warning of deflationary forces in the industry in 2024. With Cox Automotive reporting that the wholesale price of used vehicles has now dropped by 23% from its pandemic peak. That's the biggest drop in used car prices on record, with these drops especially severe for Tesla, who has cut the price of their new cars by 25% over the last year, which has caused the prices of their used cars to go down by almost 50% in less than 2 years. The price of a 2020 Model 3 has gone from $55,000 on the used car market to only $30,000. And these declining used car prices are now causing big issues for many car owners and borrowers. Roughly 80% of car purchases are financed with a loan. So if the prices and values of the cars are going down, that means many people are now underwater. With Bloomberg reporting that car owners are now falling behind on payments at the highest rate on record, with data from Fitch showing that the subprime 60-day delinquency rate on used car loans has increased to 6.1% at the end of 2023. That's the highest delinquency rate in nearly 30 years. And ultimately, this suggests that we are likely to see car prices drop more into the future in 2024, which is a problematic sign for the US economy overall. Everyone, like if we're seeing lots of defaults from subprime borrowers on used car loans, if we're seeing the prices of used cars plummet, if we're seeing the prices of new cars go down, that's the signal of an unhealthy economy under the surface, an economy where many consumers are just really struggling to afford basic necessities. Many people really can't afford to buy a new car anymore. Because while Cox Automotive is reporting that new vehicle prices are down a record 2.4% year over year, these new vehicle prices, they're still really high, with the average price of a new vehicle in America being around $49,000 entering 2024, significantly higher than the level of about $36,000 before the pandemic. So the new vehicle prices, they're down 2% year over year, but they're still up around 30%, which is just making life really hard for a lot of people who want to buy a car, especially when you consider the impact of higher interest rates. The Federal Reserve and Jerome Powell, they've greatly hiked the interest rates in America over the last 2 years, meaning that the average interest rate for a car loan skyrocketed up to 8.5%. 8.5% is the average interest rate for a 48-month new car loan. You can see this is the highest interest rate we have experienced for a car loan since all the way back in the early 2000s. So highest interest rates in 24 years combined with prices that are still way higher than their pre-pandemic levels means problems for demand in the new vehicle market. And ultimately now today, if you're the average person and you're going to buy a new car, you can expect to pay $750 a month for your new car payment. And that's just if you buy the average new car. If you buy something a little nicer, that payment's going to be over $1,000 a month based on current prices and interest rates. Meanwhile, if you go to buy a used car, your payment's probably going to be on average around $550 a month. And if you're someone with poor credit, it could be as much as $750 a month. And so these are huge costs, especially when you consider them in connection with how much rent has gone up over the last 3 years and how much, house payments have gone up with the increase in mortgage rates. And you say to yourself, like, how do Americans afford this? How can they afford this? Because the incomes haven't gone up that much. The median household income in America is around $77,000. That's up about 11% from pre-pandemic levels, while the car prices are up 30% and the interest rates have doubled. So clearly the math isn't making sense here. And this is something that the car companies are starting to warn us about. The big car companies, whether they be Tesla or whether they be Ford, they're starting to issue more warnings about consumer demand, particularly related to this affordability. Most recently, the CFO of Ford, on their most recent earnings call, he talked about how they're seeing that the budgets of car buyers are getting stretched. His name is John Lawler, and he said on a recent earnings call that right now it takes a consumer about 14% of their monthly disposable income for a vehicle, which is up compared to pre-COVID levels of 13%. 5%. And so that's actually, it's funny, it's not up as much as I thought it would be, but he's still saying we think it's going to revert back closer to the historical norms over the next 12 to 18 months, which would be a net price reduction of around $2,000 for their vehicles. He thinks that some of that's going to come through Ford reducing the prices, as well as some of it through the dealers reducing the prices, because the dealer margins are still transacting at a higher percent of MSRP than they were in the past. So Ford CFO, he's saying, all right, expect maybe a $2,000 price cut on the price of maybe the Ford F-150, which is transacting around $50,000 to $60,000 right now. So that would be about maybe a 4%, 5% reduction in price. I suspect Ford might have to reduce their prices by more than they're suggesting. And that's because there's lots of inventory on dealer lots of Fords, particularly the big Ford trucks. We're seeing more and more when you go to a dealer lot, there's lots of Fords there. Specifically, Cox Automotive is reporting that Ford has 94 days of supply on dealer lots right now. So what that means is that based on the current inventory of Fords on the market, if they didn't replenish any of the inventory, it would take 94 days for them to sell them at current sales volume. You can see this 94 days for Ford, it's above the average of 70 days of inventory for the nation and all the car brands as a whole. So these car brands where the inventory is higher, they're the ones that are probably more likely to have to reduce prices. You can see Mitsubishi has 110 days of supply, Buick has 106 days of supply, Nissan has 106 days of supply. Other automakers with tons of supply also include Lincoln, Jeep, Chrysler, and Dodge. So maybe we see bigger price reductions among these car brands, while at the other end of the spectrum, Toyota only has 34 days of supply on dealer lots. Honda only has 41 days. Lexus only has 41 days. BMW only has 42 days. Tighter inventory and tighter supply for these brands, suggesting that we're potentially not going to see as big of price reductions. And again, folks, just to zoom this out so you can understand kind of why this is important from a broader macroeconomic sense, is that the car market, it's kind of like the housing market in the sense that it's showing you in real time kind of how consumers are feeling, what they can afford. So if we're seeing building inventory levels and declining prices in the car market, that's a signal something is not quite right in the economy, that the demand is down. And you can see, sure enough, total new vehicle sales, they came in at around 16.3 million on an annualized basis to end 2023, which is an improvement from like the super low levels in the pandemic when there was like no inventory. There was no inventory in 2021 during the pandemic. If you went to buy a car, there were none on the dealer lot, so the sales were low. They've bounced back, but they're kind of now stabilized at a level that's down about 10 to 15% from pre-pandemic levels. So the car sales, they're low, and we're seeing particularly problems develop in the electric vehicle space. Everyone, I mean, this has really been the big story in the car market over the last 3 months, is that the EVs are not doing so well. We're seeing lots of EV inventory on dealer lots. We're seeing Tesla have to cut their new car prices by 25%. We're seeing the used car prices for EVs declining. Even the CFO of Ford commented that they're seeing incredible downward price pressure this year on EVs. And so what's going on here with the EV market? And is this something that could eventually just kind of drag down the car market overall? Well, the issue is actually really related to oversupply and overproduction. All these car companies kind of at once over the last 3 to 5 years got high on the supply, really just jumped into the idea that we're going to be EV only in the next decade. We're going to produce lots of EVs, and they kind of jumped ahead of the consumer demand. And as a result, there's lots of unsold inventory, a situation that's likely to get worse in 2024, as Hertz, the car rental company, is now going to dump 20,000 EVs onto the market in a shift back to gas-powered cars. Hertz cited low customer demand as a reason for the change, and this is really interesting because back in 2021, Hertz announced plans to buy 100,000 Tesla vehicles, and ultimately they're going to dump 1/3 of its U.S. electric vehicle fleet onto the used car market. I mean, that's kind of crazy, folks. It suggests the price of these EVs are going to go down by even more, and that a lot of the people who bought EVs kind of at the peak of the mania in 2021 and 2022, they're in actually kind of big trouble right now. Because if you bought a Tesla in 2021, 2022 at peak price and you financed it, which most people did with a loan, you're now heavily underwater on that loan. So when it comes time to get a new car, you're going to have to come out of pocket. A situation that I kind of uncovered here in this Reddit thread, everyone. Take a look at this. A poster on Reddit talked about how used Tesla prices are tanking. They're down 50% in 2 years, which is great news for buyers, but is seriously hurting those of us who already own. This person bought their Model 3 at the worst possible time, used in February 2022 for 51K. Now that car is less than 30K. This person would love to sell it and upgrade to a Model Y to take advantage of the tax credits, but the amount of money lost on the asset is demoralizing. And many of the commenters here in the Reddit thread actually make great points. They talk about how this is the car market going back to normal. Look at the price of any used vehicle from October 2022 and compare it to today. And some people are saying, I mean, it's a car. It's going to lose its value. So maybe you shouldn't be that surprised. However, I still think it's pretty amazing to see just how much the prices of some of these EVs and used vehicles have dropped, situation which suggests that there's deflationary forces afoot in the US economy, everyone. The car prices are going down. The home prices in certain markets are going down. The builders have cut the prices of new homes. We're seeing the commodity prices for different types of foods go down. There are deflationary forces building, suggesting that maybe 2024 is a year where we could see declining prices as opposed to increasing prices. With CNBC recently releasing a report discussing what are the prices that have actually gone down in the economy over the last year. And they're breaking it down by food, energy, as well as other items. And they're showing that, the prices of eggs have gone down by 23%. The prices of lettuce have gone down by 27%. Fuel, oil, and gas has gone down by 14%. Health insurance has gone down by 27%, which is kind of a funky one. I'm not so sure that that's totally correct. Other items are laundry equipment, car and truck rentals, televisions are down by 10%, and airline fares are down by 10%. And so there are actual deflationary forces occurring in the economy, which is suggesting a slowing economy. However, the problem is, even with some of this deflation now setting in, the price levels are still just really high compared to what they used to be. The prices of goods and services more broadly are up 20% from their pre-pandemic levels. So it's not like, prices starting to go down in certain segments is all of a sudden bringing consumers back in, right? Two other big corporations that have talked about deflation recently are Walmart as well as IKEA. IKEA is the big furniture store, everyone. I'm sure a lot of you buy some of your furniture from there. They're saying that they're going to cut prices this year and that according to Business Insider, the company's comments on deflation should be setting competitors on edge, with IKEA's CEO telling Reuters it will stick to planned price cuts even amid the Red Sea shipping crisis. And if you're someone who wants to track this data and information even more, I want to encourage you, hit the join button below and become a channel member here on YouTube. Channel members have access to exclusive videos as well as my Real Estate 101 course. It's only available to channel members to see my predictions on where home prices are heading into the future, as well as lessons on the history of the US economy and housing market. There's a backlog of these lessons here for you to watch, as well as new ones that come out once every 2 weeks. The cost of joining as a channel member is $5 a month, and you can access those benefits by hitting the join button below.